Welcome everybody to today's conversation. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Kabir Shahani, the CEO of Amperity, and I'm really excited to moderate a discussion today with two extraordinary CEOs of two of the world's greatest consumer businesses. First, I'd like to welcome Joanne Krivoisterat, who's the CEO of Tapestry, which is a New York house of modern luxury and lifestyle brands. Tapestry's portfolio includes Coach, Kate Spade New York, and the Stuart Weitzman brand. Before her appointment as CEO, Joanne served as the company's chief financial officer. She also served as executive vice president and chief operating officer at Abercrombie & Fitch from February 2017 to June of 2019. Also held senior management and financial positions with industry-leading brands like Kohl's, Walmart, Macy's department stores, and has served on the board of directors at Home Group Inc. since January of 2019. Hi, Joanne. Excited to have you this morning.
Hi, Kabir. It's great to be here.
We're also joined by my friend Kevin Johnson, who is the president and CEO of Starbucks Coffee Company, where he proudly carries the Starbucks legacy of human connection. His career spans more than 30 years, including 16 years at Microsoft and 5 years as CEO of Juniper Networks. In 2008, Kevin was appointed to the National Security Telecommunications Advisory Committee, where he served for both Presidents George W. Bush and later President Barack Obama. I also have the distinction of serving on the Amperity board of directors with Kevin Johnson. So Kevin, it's so great to see you and thank you for your time today.
Well, Kabir, good morning. It's good to be with you. And Joanne, it's good to see you as well.
Before we jump into the conversation, which, as I mentioned to both of you and to our audience earlier, we certainly want to make very organic. I thought I'd frame up kind of this whole conversation, how it got all started. And Kevin, it really began with a lot of the inspiration you've had around this idea of the great human reconnection, which we'll be talking about today. As we thought about it in the context of our business and our customers' businesses, there's really kind of four buckets that we describe this great human reconnection and the importance of it. Number one is moving into this new phase. While unfortunately the pandemic is still raging in many parts of the world, as vaccination rates increase here in the United States and in other countries, there certainly is a sense of a reopening, and there's a renewed optimism around this new phase. The second big bucket is this massive consumer change that we've seen in consumer behavior specifically, and just different expectations and the ways in which consumers interact with incredible brands like yours. Third is, of course, the technology acceleration that's created. And we're seeing in so many ways the largest demand for new technology that we've seen in many decades. And lastly, we kind of wrap all that up to think about opportunity. And when you go through these massive periods of change and disruption, what opportunities do those create, particularly for consumer brands, given the impact of this pandemic over the past year and a half? So Kevin, I'd love to start with you, given not only your passion for the great human reconnection, but also the leadership Starbucks has had in being able to help manage through the pandemic globally. Now that we're on the tail end, ideally, of this big disruption, how is Starbucks experiencing the reopening?
Well, Kabir, I guess let me set some context. Starbucks, we now are operating over 33,000 stores in 84 different markets around the world. We have 400,000 Starbucks partners. Call everyone who works at Starbucks a partner. 400,000 Starbucks partners who proudly wear the green apron, and we're serving over 100 million customer occasions a week. And so with that breadth and that reach, we have a very direct interaction with consumers on a daily basis. You think about the Starbucks brand. We are a company with a mission that is grounded in humanity. Our mission is to inspire and nurture the human spirit, one person, one cup, one neighborhood at a time. And over the last 50 years, we've really built the company on this concept of bringing people together over coffee. And, this concept of the third place that, I give Howard Schultz and all the great leaders that came before me all the credit in the world for what they created was an experience for customers that's a warm, welcoming place where they can come. That's not their home, it's not their work, it's that third place, a place where you feel part of a community, a place where you can connect with others, a place where you can enjoy, a handcrafted beverage personalized for you. And so much of that third place experience, you think over the last 18 months, has been massively disrupted as we went into this global pandemic. You know, and I like to say, look, this is my first global pandemic. So all of us around the world had to figure out, how do we navigate this? And so, you know, I'd say early on as we entered this pandemic about 18 months ago, you know, we've got a very large business in China. And as COVID began to spread in China, I was working with Belinda Wong, our CEO and chair of Starbucks China, on how we respond to this. And, you know, we basically set 3 simple principles that have helped us navigate this pandemic. The first was to prioritize the health and well-being of our Starbucks partners and the customers we serve. Second was to partner with health officials as they work to mitigate and contain the spread. And the third was to show up in a positive, responsible way in every community we serve. Now, those 3 principles have served us well. You know, we've been able to navigate through this pandemic. We've shifted store protocols. You know, we've had to, at periods, only have drive-throughs open, but we've had to amplify digital relationships. We've had to amplify drive-through. We've had to amplify mobile ordering. We've had to really leverage that digital customer relationship as we navigated this. But what's happening now, if you think about it, for the last 18 months, all of humanity has lived in a state of isolation. You know, as human beings, we've changed our personal lives. We've changed the way we work. We homeschool our children because they're not in school. We stayed within our bubble so that we didn't get exposed to COVID. We work from home and we sit at home and we click join, leave on Teams or Zoom all day long. And so we've lived this last 18 months in isolation. And as human beings, human beings were meant to connect with one another. We were meant to be together face to face. It's how we share energy. It's how we overcome adversity. It's how we share joy in our lives. It's how we feel part of a community. It's how we are seen. It's how we're heard. And so as the vaccinations have rolled out and as governments begin to loosen some of the restrictions, what we are seeing unfold right now before our eyes is what we call the great human reconnection. And it is after 18 months of living in isolation, as human beings, we want to be out and social again. We want to do it in a safe way, but we want to be social. You know, our children want to get back to school and see their friends. You know, they want to play sports again. We want to come back to work and see our work colleagues. We want to go to a Starbucks and sit and feel part of our communities. And we want to go to our churches. And we want to go back to being social creatures that we are wired to be. We crave that human interaction. And so, you know, my thesis is, look, every consumer brand is going to experience the implications of this great human reconnection. And we're seeing it. Just, you know, you just look over this last 4th of July holiday, the number of people traveling, the number of people at beaches, the number of people at concerts, the people that can go to an NBA basketball game, the number of people coming to Starbucks. It's mind-blowing what's happening. And so that's why I think this next era is really the great human reconnection. And it is part of how we heal as humanity following this pandemic, is the opportunity to get back together, to reconnect, and in many ways to socialize once again and heal. And John, I don't know if you're seeing similar things, but you know, certainly I would imagine every consumer brand in the world is going through that experience.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we're getting a lot of great feedback from our field associates, the folks in our stores on the front line talking to customers. Customers are coming in; they're excited to come in. They want to engage with our associates again. And we've actually seen it all the way through the pandemic with our associates having virtual shopping parties, and you know that the customer is really responding to connecting with a human again, even virtually. But you can't replace that in real life experience, and we're definitely seeing a very optimistic consumer out there.
That's incredible. Joanne, you know, speaking of that optimistic consumer, Joanne, I'm curious what you see as the greatest opportunity for consumer businesses as you think about this idea of re-engaging with the associate if you're at a Starbucks and you're re-engaging with your community, how do you think about that in the context of a consumer business, and what are some of the opportunities that you're looking at Tapestry in that change?
Well, we are seeing an optimistic consumer, certainly coming out of the pandemic, coming back together. It's almost a back to school moment for society at large, right? People want to come out, they want to look their best, they want to feel their best. It's almost a roaring 20s kind of moment for fashion is the way we're looking at it. We are seeing a higher level of omni-channel behavior, though. There have been a lot of changes that have happened over the last 18 months with how customers shop, where they discover brands. And interestingly, another layer I'd add to it is with the social unrest over the last 18 months, we're seeing consumers move their values up higher in their consideration set. So they want to shop where a brand reflects their own and aligns with their own values. And that is becoming more important for consumer brands, not only to think about, but to change the way we engage our customers. So I think with the customer changing so fast, the biggest opportunity for consumer businesses is in how and where they engage customers. And, the change, as I mentioned, requires us to stay close to consumers, really to understand what matters to them, and then reach them in a relevant way throughout their journey, from brand and product discovery all the way through the transaction to a point of advocacy for a brand. So that's how we're thinking about it. Over the past year, we've embarked on a program at Tapestry to sharpen our focus on the consumer, to lean into digital and leverage the power of data and analytics across our value chain. And we've changed the way we work, which is a really important part of this whole equation, to empower our teams to help us move faster. As we talk about responding to consumer, being agile is critically important, and leveraging data and digital more fully, both to make us faster, but also to make us smarter as we embark on a decision making through this process. We've seen a massive shift to e-com in the last 12 months. As of our last earnings call, we've hit significant scale with our e-com business. It's grown to over $1.5 billion on a rolling 12-month basis. That's more than double where it was a year ago. So if you think about how big that shift has been for us operationally, but also how we engage consumers. And consumers are discovering brands differently and products from, we traditional fashion shows were, how we used to unveil our assortments every season. We'd have print campaigns. Those have shifted to digital and social media platforms, and consumers are moving very quickly discovering brands on those platforms. So we have to change with our consumer. And we're also seeing changes in where consumers transact, even in digital spaces where, it's not just about the consumer doing a search on Google and landing on your website and looking at your product assortments. They're looking at social media platforms for inspiration, but they're also transacting, and live streaming is becoming even more important across the chain, really starting in China, but now moving around the world in terms of how and where consumers transact. So, there are a lot of things that are happening in the space and with the consumer, both in how they shop, their values, what they value, what's relevant. And we think a lot of these changes are going to be sticky, and it's up to us to adjust our business models to make sure that we can keep pace with the changes in the environment.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And obviously, this area of consumer data is one where I've got a lot of passion, and I think it's probably a lot of interest to our audience as well. And just getting an opportunity to see firsthand how well your team is executing against that roadmap is super impressive. I'm curious how the pandemic changed that focus, and was that an area of investment prior to the pandemic, and it just accelerated? Was it sort of on the back burner, and you looked at it and said, you know what, clear the decks and let's make sure that we're allocating the time and capital to go and really focus on our investments around customer data?
Well, I will say that that's a great question. As a direct-to-consumer retailer, and most of our business is direct, the vast majority of our business is direct-to-consumer. We have a lot of data, right? And we have always had a lot of data. Coach, if you go back through our history, was had a catalog business. So that allowed our company to collect a lot of data. The important changes that we're seeing is first of all, how do you connect that data to deliver insights and then inform decision making? So as we think about managing data in our value chain and making investments, the first thing we've done is we have invested in our organization. So it starts with people and talent in terms of building capabilities. And we've matured our data and analytics organization and our technology teams to a point where we think of ourselves, or they think of themselves, as a technology team embedded in a traditional brand company. So it's been an important shift in the way we think about building those capabilities. And then as it relates to data, there are really three main areas of focus. The first is making sure we've got 360-degree data, that we're not only capturing the customer data and have a comprehensive view of the customer, but it's about customer combined with our product data, combined with our supply chain data and our location data, and bringing that all together is what makes the insights more robust. And then it's about, in fact, we've changed the name of our analytics team from a data lab, something that happens on the side in a lab, to data analytics, to now applied analytics, because the second area of focus is really how do we embed data-driven decision-making across our value chain. So it's not just about having the analytics, about applying them and taking action. It's really the activation. So we're providing brand and region and function specific analytics to support our decision-making process. And we're putting it in the hands of the decision makers. It can't be in a lab and a nice PowerPoint presentation. It really has to be embedded in the decision-making process. And that's where the magic happens, right? As we activate against those insights. And then the third part of our focus is really in transformational change. So where can we leverage data science and AI as an example to improve efficiency in our operations or effectiveness of our operations as the first part of that? And then where do we leverage machine learning solutions to improve forecasting, to really be more predictive? And we see that impacting areas like planning and buying and product assortment. And that predictive forward-looking analytics support is really critical. And that really is the heartbeat of our business.
Wow, it's so interesting to hear both about the way you're thinking, even just the nomenclature for some of these teams and how that impacts purpose and influence to drive impact in the organization. And it's not lost on me that even 3 or 4 years ago, how nascent these investments were in many retail businesses. I contrast that a little bit with Starbucks, and Kevin, I'd love to hear from you and how you've thought about data and analytics as what some people or many people on the call may not know is somebody who's actually a really deep technologist, and just this transformation and being technology driven at Starbucks. How do you think about data and analytics and your overall technology investments, both just as a company, but particularly around this reopening?
Well, I think I think Joanne's comments were kind of spot on as in terms of how I see the industry, any consumer brand moving forward. In fact, it was about 5 years ago at one of our investor conferences at Starbucks, or an analyst or an earnings call or something, I made the comment that the two transformative elements of modern day retail are, number one, you have to create a customer experience in your brick and mortar store so that it becomes a destination for the consumer. And number two, you then have to extend that brick and mortar experience to a digital customer relationship. And that is what we've been focused on at Starbucks. With 33,000 stores, brick and mortar presence, we create a destination, but we've now worked to extend that to a digital customer relationship. And we've been doing that, working hard on that over the last 4 or 5 years. And one of the key trends that consumer behavior trends that's being amplified coming out of this pandemic, in many ways, this pandemic accelerated digital adoption by a decade. I mean, people rapidly now have figured out how to work and shop and live in a much more digitally oriented world. And so one of the key consumer trends is consumers want experiences that effortlessly fit their lifestyle. And that's a combination of a brick and mortar. It's a combination of digital. So, at Starbucks, as we've built, serving 100 million customers a week, we've built our mobile app and we've built this whole digital customer relationship model around our rewards program. And it was about 2 years ago, 2 years ago or so, I just posted a LinkedIn white paper that I wrote about artificial intelligence. And I was fundamentally, sort of taking the position that we wanted to approach artificial intelligence in a way that was not about replacing humans, but it was about enabling humans to be more human. And so we've created within Starbucks our own AI, and I challenged our team. I said, I want us to build a world-class AI team that is every bit as capable or more capable than what you would find in tech companies. And that's what we've been on a mission doing over this last several years. And we've got a world-class tech organization now, I think, at Starbucks. And we call our artificial intelligence Deep Brew. Deep Brew is our code name for everything we're doing around AI. And you can't do the kinds of machine learning and AI unless you're really thoughtful about the data that you are assembling and leveraging to feed that AI capability. So today, Deep Brew personalizes every suggestion on our mobile app, every promotion or offer that's given to a customer is personalized for them using Deep Brew. Deep Brew now is automating daily orders from our stores so that human beings don't have to sit down and count inventory and figure out how many breakfast sandwiches to order or how much coffee to order for the store. Deep Brew does that for them. Deep Brew is now helping create partner schedules. So if they know partners have certain things in their lives they want to schedule around, Deep Brew knows what the demand in the store is going to be. So it helps us schedule Green Apron partners in the stores. And so Deep Brew is becoming woven, into the fabric of how we support the operation. And by doing that, we're reducing the amount of administrative time that partners have to spend in the store, which frees them up to spend more time connecting with their customers and to supporting one another. And so I think there's the things that Joanne talked about. I said, I fully, believe is the direction of the future. And those consumer brands that understand it and focus on, how to get the right privacy policies in place to build trust-based relationships with their customers, how to assemble the data in a way that it can be meaningful to whatever analytics and insights engines they're building, and how those analytics and insights engines are now empowering people in their organization. Those consumer brands are going to be the big winners. And there is a fairly significant disruption that's unfolding in the industry today. If you're a consumer brand and you're dependent on third-party cookies as a way to target your display ads or your digital marketing, you're going to be in big trouble going forward. And then you say, oh, well, then I can use social media. Well, then you're just going to pay a higher toll for social media. My view is the key is what we call first-party known customers. And if we treat those customers with respect and we personalize the relationship and we've got the right privacy policies in place, then we are in control of our own destiny. And I think that's exactly what Joanne just described as well. So I think there's a lot of alignment, from Joanne, your strategy and what you described, and what I believe to be, it's clearly Starbucks strategy, but what I believe to be a massive shift in the industry.
Certainly.
I'll just add to that. I completely agree, and it's thinking about the full value chain of how we deliver and leveraging analytics in each of those places, and really understanding how to take that data and connect it to our people and have our people really in control and sort of take it out of the control environment and put it into the hands of the people who can engage our consumers. And we're seeing a lot of traction from that, a lot of adoption. We are changing skill sets along the way and training our teams on new tools and new technologies. And it's paying off, but I only see that growing as we move forward. So completely agree, Kevin.
I'm so curious. A question for both of you. And again, I have a bias here because I get to see firsthand just the way in which your companies function in this area. but as CEOs who are leading big businesses, and just happens to be big businesses that are both also performing very well, what's your view on consumer businesses broadly and their awareness around this challenge? And, you know, is first party data something that you hear about from a lot of your peers, and it's a topic of conversation, or is it still a kind of deep space nine exploration and trying to figure out exactly what, you know, as a CEO struggling to figure out what they should be doing around first party data? And for those maybe that are in our session today that maybe aren't the CEOs of their companies, but are leaders in their companies and, you know, building, you know, really meaningful data or analytics functions in their companies, maybe the second part to that question would be, how would you guide them to advocate and frame out the need around first party data and put it on the radar of the C-suite and of their board, if that even is appropriate?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Go first.
Well, I'll jump in and say that I think, you know, the way to engage consumers as we move forward is becoming more and more complex in some ways and requiring these capabilities. And so building these capabilities will be critical to engaging consumers. It's not about just building a store and putting up a storefront, a sign on the store and opening your doors anymore. That's, you know, that's a part of the experience, absolutely. But the omni-channel experience is what's important, and optimizing that experience, making it relevant for consumers. Their expectations are changing so fast. They want that experience to be very relevant to them, and that requires a level of personalization. So I see it as table stakes, honestly, moving forward in order to do business as a consumer business. And, you know, the war on talent and building these capabilities requires some level of scale and expertise. And I think the longer a company waits to build it, the harder it will be to build. So, you know, the way I think about it at Tapestry is these are critical investments in our future and our future growth. And we can't be a relevant consumer company without building these capabilities. So we're on that plan. It is part of an important part of our growth strategy going forward. And we're building, you know, the people, we're adding tools and technologies and making the investments required. And we continue to see response from our consumers. So if this didn't have a return associated with it, we wouldn't be doing it. But it absolutely has a return. And I see that only picking up speed going forward.
I would just add a couple thoughts to Joanne's comments, Kabir. You know, first of all, many consumer businesses look and say, wow, Amazon is the company that has the, you know, the largest amount of consumer basket level purchase data, and a lot of consumer brands say, well, how do we ever compete against that? Well, and the answer is, well, you have to start with your first party customer data, and you have to figure out how to now extend your experiences into those personalized digital experiences that Joanne mentioned. And it does have to be personalized. It can't be you know, a one size fits all ad or offer or sort of promotion that you're doing, because that's not what consumers expect today. They expect that personalization, and that's what you're competing against. And I think most consumer brands, I think, understand that. I think there's kind of three categories of consumer brands. Number one, they understand it, but they're not sure what to do about it. They understand it and they have a strategy to do something about it, but they're not executing well against that strategy, and they're falling behind. And then there's a handful that I think understand it, they have a strategy, and they're executing well against it. So I think there's varying degrees. I think there's a general awareness that this is a critical thing strategically for the future, but there's varying degrees of strategically how to approach it and varying degrees of execution against it. And at the same time, you know, you take what the journey we've been on is we've, you know, privacy and building trust with our customers is the utmost important thing. You know, look, we've built over 50 years now, we've built one of the world's most admired and trusted brands. I think we were number 3 or 4 on Fortune's most admired brands last year. And so what's most important is that we do this in a way that's consistent with our values and consistent with the relationship we have with our customers. And that's why, finding ways for us to have the right privacy policies and let customers opt in and participate, but then show them the right value on our mobile app. By joining our rewards program, we can now personalize things for you. We can help, enhance your Starbucks experience, and we can create those experiences that effortlessly fit your lifestyle. And that's the future. And to do that, my personal opinion is it has to be, there has to be a degree of awareness and a priority in the C-suite to drive it. It can't just be something that, good, thoughtful marketing and technologists are doing bottoms up, because it requires change in the mindset of the company at the highest levels. Mm-hmm. And I think you're going to see those companies that their CEO and their CMO and their CFO, kind of chief operating officer, the CXO suite, understands this priority, and they're personally engaged and involved, because it involves taking some risk. It involves trying some new things. It involves investing in things, ahead of the payout curve. But if you don't take risk and you don't try new things and you don't invest ahead of the curve, you will fall behind, and you will be one of those consumer brands that will be disrupted by this and will be at a significant disadvantage the longer you wait.
Mm-hmm. No, that's incredible, and a bunch of different places I want to go from there. And I'm gonna go a little off script, because I know we're gonna do Q&A at the end, but the Q&A came in during both of your comments that I think is going to be very helpful to our audience. The question is from somebody named Jordan, who said, how does a company who has relied so heavily on third-party data in the past, and Jordan, if you don't mind, I'll extend that question to say whether that's culturally or functionally, actually work to make that shift? And maybe in the context of you don't have a lot of first-party data, or it's just there's not an awareness around that. I'd be curious, if that were the case in your businesses, or maybe what your journey was to actually have this realization. And well, maybe we'll come back to the more Q&A later, but I thought that was a really good question in the context of the conversation right now.
Joanne, you want to start on that, or you want me to?
I'd love for you to take the lead on that one, Kevin.
Okay, so here's how I think about that question. If you're a consumer brand that's highly dependent on third-party data, how do you begin this journey? I think there's two elements of this. Number one is you have to understand, if customers are buying from you, by definition, you have access to first-party customer data. If you're any kind of a direct-to-consumer business, you have to leverage that first. Figure out how to use that as a basis for which you can begin to assemble your first-party known customer data. And there's a range of ways to do that, a range of technologies that can help, but you have to start assembling the first-party data that you have access to. The second element of it is thinking through, how do you create a vehicle to now communicate with your customers, your first-party known customers? It's either on your website, it's on a mobile app, it's, as Joanne was talking about, a lot of their stuff is direct-to-consumer, omni-channel. For Starbucks, it's our mobile app. And many consumer brands say, okay, what is going to attract consumers to use my mobile app or to come to my website? A lot of times it's a loyalty program. So what you're finding is loyalty programs where you sign in and you get points and you get rewards and you get a better customer experience and you develop a more intimate relationship with that brand, is a way now to enhance just the raw transaction data that you get from a direct-to-consumer business. At Starbucks, the evolution of this began with the fact that we sold gift cards. Hey, buy a gift card to give someone for the holidays or for their birthday. Well, then we got the idea, well, what if we had a customer register that gift card and they could reload it, and that became a loyalty card, and we incented them to do that. So a gift card became a loyalty card. And then we said, well, what if we took that physical loyalty card and built that into a mobile app where it's now a digital loyalty card? And then we said, if we built it in the mobile app, what if we gave them a store locator and then showed them how to order their favorite beverages? And then we said, and now we can save your favorite beverages, and we can save your favorite stores, and now we can start to personalize suggestions to you. So this was an evolution at Starbucks that came from gift cards to now, that We have, over 24 million 90-day active, people use that mobile app every day. And that becomes a point of connecting with them. And that's where we can talk to our customers and communicate with them. And the data that we now are able to really have visibility to is fueling Deep Brew to deepen those relationships. So I think it's a combination of, you have to understand where is your first party data and how do you get it organized. And number two, how are you going to create some vehicle for you to engage and talk to your customers, either over email, over a mobile app, on your website. And I think loyalty programs are going to be key to that.
It's a really inspiring story, especially for all of us as consumers who, I remember when those gold cards came out, and that was this coveted, like, you get to have a physical gold card in your wallet as a way to show that you're a VIP at Starbucks, and to see how that.
I'm searching. I still have my gold card in my wallet. I saved it just for like it's like the OG version of the mobile app. Here's my gold card.
That's right. Yeah, and it's a good reminder of the way in which these ideas are iterative. And if you didn't do the gold card, maybe you wouldn't have thought about the mobile app, right? And it's just this really great flywheel. Joanne, I'm curious, this framework of, and I want to go back to some stuff around COVID in just a minute and sort of the reopening part of this, but just sort of more generally speaking, Joanne, this framework of that Kevin described of having great customer experience in the store, which certainly Tapestry's had across many different places around the world. And then thinking about extending that digitally is a great parallel to what Kevin was just describing. I'm curious, as you think about this opportunity to now use technology to connect with customers in so many different ways that maybe we hadn't thought about before, what are some of the things that you're thinking about at Tapestry and starting to experiment with, or maybe that you mentioned the growth in e-com, and just sort of generally how you're thinking about using technology to connect with your customers?
Great question. And I'd love to build on Kevin's points because, I think Starbucks, Kevin, has been a leader in what's great about building loyalty programs, building loyalty and that personalization, where it becomes about the level of convenience and relevance that you're delivering to a customer. So that journey you just described, Kevin, was, for me, I was on that journey with Starbucks, right? And I have the app, and I love the fact that, frankly, I can just bring my phone in and I can scan and pay because it's easier, right? I don't have to search for my wallet. I've got my bag. I've got, and it's really around that experience. And then when you combine that with the personalization of very quickly going to my favorite drink or my favorite breakfast sandwich or whatever it is, it really is about that experience. So, we're, I think, earlier on our journey on developing loyalty programs. I think in the industry, loyalty programs have, a love-hate relationship with them. Retailers love them, but sometimes they have a promotional angle to them, and there's concern about the margin implications and the brand implications to those. And I think the point is, you can develop loyalty with consumers and drive loyalty to your brands without being promotional by delivering a great experience and a personalized experience. And really, that's a differentiator. So I appreciate Starbucks taking the lead on that. It's influencing a lot of how we think about building loyalty with our brands. And then as we think about the brick and mortar experience, I get the question all the time with this, surge in e-commerce. What does that mean for stores? And we have almost 1,500 stores globally, and we believe that stores still matter. That physical touch point between, and we're talking about the great human reconnection today, that physical touch point is so important. And as I mentioned earlier, we've seen that all the way through the pandemic of customers really reaching out to our associates, wanting to continue to stay engaged and inspired. When people come in to buy a handbag, that's an emotional purchase, right? They want, I tell the story all the time. One of our top selling bags last July, all of our stores were closed or just reopening. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Nobody was going to a party. One of our top selling bags in Kate Spade was a pineapple shaped bag that sold regular price. And nobody needed a pineapple shaped bag, but that emotional connection, that point of delivering some joy and optimism in somebody's day made that bag and made that a success for our brand. So as we see that emotional connection being so important in our business, the best people to deliver that emotional connection are our frontline associates, right? And our customers continue to reach out to them as we navigated through the pandemic. Clienteling for us is a big part of our business, and it's how our associates engage with our consumers and have a conversation and help them with styling or gifting advice. And as everything shut down and consumers were having a hard time getting in for clienteling appointments, frankly, organically, by empowering our teams, our associates developed virtual shopping appointments. And that became something that our customers more and more were gravitating towards. And then those shopping appointments became shopping parties. And as I mentioned, it really started in China, where these store managers and sales associates were creating these virtual shopping engagements and developing following of their own. They had their own followers. They're becoming social media influencers of their own right. So we have these, as we talk about marketing, key opinion leaders in marketing. Our associates are frankly our best brand advocates and are becoming key opinion leaders for us. So we've harnessed that and provided tools and training around the world for that to continue, for consumers to continue to engage. But that omni-channel experience for our consumer continues to be important. Digital is not a replacement for that experience, it's an amplifier. So how do we take the best of the digital experience and combine it with the brick and mortar? The role of the store is changing in terms of how and why consumers come into a store. They may come in to touch and feel the product after doing discovery online. They may decide to purchase online but come into a store to pick it up because that's more convenient for them. They may come into a store but then order online. So there are a lot of different ways that we can fulfill the customer's shopping journey from start to finish with a combination of physical and digital. So we're seeing that continue to be important. But as we talk about leveraging our staff and our sales associates, what I think is most powerful when we talk about combining the data pieces, we're using and leveraging data to reach new audiences in a more personalized way. I think the next frontier is how do we put the power of data and analytics, leveraging CDP technology in the hands of our associates to support that clienteling, to personalize the experience, while the customer is in the store. And I know, Kevin, at Starbucks, that's part of how you're delivering a great experience for the consumer, taking that data, personalizing it so when the consumer is in the store. I see an opportunity for us to further embed this technology in the hands of our associates in our stores through clienteling and other applications. So a lot of work to come, but a lot of really great experiences for our consumers.
Super, super cool. Yeah.
Just to reinforce the point that Joanne made about the fact that brick and mortar stores are here to stay, is you see a lot of brick and mortar consumer brands that have extended that brick and mortar experience to these digital customer relationships. At the same time, look at Amazon, who started with 100% digital, and now they're building brick and mortar stores. So I think it's important just to realize that both of those are important, and I think this combination of brick and mortar and digital, and as Joanne talked about, omni-channel, that is the future.
Yeah, that's super cool and fun to hear about that. I know it's early days, and Kevin, as you said before, it's all of our first pandemic, so I'm not asking for any precise predictions, but I'd be curious to hear when you talk about that physical experience. What are you starting to see very early days in terms of consumers, for example, Joanne, consumers' expectation around continuing to have virtual shopping appointments and how that's impacting what you're starting to see early days in terms of how consumers are spending time in your stores. And Kevin, similarly, we were chatting the other day. I flew back from New York City last night and was walking down the street just watching Starbucks after Starbucks just be packed, and which was really fun to see. What's your sense of both the brick and mortar experience in this kind of phase we're in right now? And one question that came in through the Q&A, and I'll make a plug for anybody else that wants to continue to ask questions in Q&A to please do. What's your view on safety? And do you think that safety is going to just go away altogether, or is this sort of there's a set of things that are now here to stay, for the foreseeable future in terms of, and how you're thinking about that in terms of welcoming guests and customers back into your stores.
Yeah, I guess the way I would answer the first part of that question, Kabir, is sort of what do we expect to see happening in these brick and mortar stores? And there's kind of 5 consumer shifts in consumer behavior that we've identified at Starbucks that we're really focused on. Number 1 is the fact that consumers want to socialize again, and shopping is a social activity. The interaction they have with with our Starbucks partners in our stores, or the associates in Joann's stores, and being out shopping with your friends or your family, that is an uplifting experience, especially when we've lived in isolation for 18 months. And so I think there's this aspect of human connection that people are craving, and one way to get human connection is you go shopping, you go visit stores, you do that with friends, and you get out and you feel like you're part of a community and socializing with other human beings. That's number 1. Number 2 is this point I made about experiences that effortlessly fit your lifestyle. And so yes, the virtual experiences that have been created, those will continue, but they're going to be complemented with sort of the physical in-store experiences. And you have to do both. And some people say, oh, well, is it this or this? Well, my view is, look, let's not get caught up in the tyranny of or. It's really the genius of and. How do you do a great in-store experience and a great digital experience? And that, and that was amplified to me once I was visiting a store in Southern California, and there were two young women who are moms sitting, having their coffee, visiting in our store. And I started talking to them, and they said, well, we came here today because our children are on a play date. They said, usually when we have our children, they're in the car seat in the car and we go through the drive-through, but today they're on a play date. So today we want to sit in the store and enjoy ourselves. And that's uplifting. And that just shows sometimes it's the need state of convenience, sometimes it's the need state of connection, and you got to do both well. And that's how you create experiences. I think and when they do that, consistency is important. And that's the third trend, is customers are looking for those consistent, repeatable experiences that build, they trust that, we try to create that consistency around the world, because customers trust if they go to a Starbucks, they can get their handcrafted beverage and they know what to expect. In food and beverage, consumers are looking for more plant-based proteins and milks. Why, when we launched oat milk, we're selling more oat milk than they can manufacture. We outran Oatly's entire manufacturing plants. They're building a whole, I've talked to the CEO of Oatly, Tony, they're building all new plants just to fuel Starbucks demand for oat milk. And so, Impossible sausage breakfast sandwiches, plant-based proteins and milks that's the big thing. And then finally, the fifth is exactly what Joanne mentioned. Consumers want to do business with brands that stand for something, that have values that they can associate with. And I think it's important too that a lot of times they say, hey, this brand stands for values that I believe in. That's why I want to associate myself with that brand. And and I think in a lot of ways that's part of why customers are proud to carry their cup with the green siren, as they walk down the street to visit their family and friends. Is that, hopefully it's a brand that they identify with, because we are a brand that is grounded in the human experience, something that we all share. And so that's what I think. Those are the 5 shifts in consumer behaviors coming out of this pandemic that we have identified, and that we are innovating around and really amplifying our ability to meet those consumer needs and address those shifts.
Yeah, and to build on that, I couldn't agree more, Kevin. This human connection is palpable, and the change in the desire and the understanding of human experience as we've gone through the last 18 months has really risen, I would say, in the order of priorities. I mean, first and foremost, the safety of and well-being of our associates, our customers, and our communities remains paramount. So all of the protocols that we've put in place will remain, and we want to make sure that our associates, everybody in our stores feels safe and comfortable. And we're leveraging a lot of feedback in that equation to understand where our customers are, where our associates are in that continuum of feeling safe, even, from encouraging vaccinations and after vaccination, even to get people more comfortable with being out and around and close to people. We are seeing, as Kevin said, a real uplift in consumers. They're very optimistic. They're happy to be out. They want to engage. We're seeing a very optimistic, consumer out there who's enjoying the opportunity to reconnect again. So the environment is very positive. But fundamentally, we've done over the past 18 months, we've reset our purpose for each of our brands and for our company at Tapestry, and reset our values and reiterated it. So we've really focused on purpose and values as we've developed our business model and our business strategies going forward. And as we think about the experience that our customers have in our stores, we want to make sure that true DNA of our brands is coming through, and that our purpose and values are also showing up in the experience we deliver for consumers. And we think that continues to be it's increasingly important to consumers in terms of how they where they want to shop and where they spend their dollars and with which brands. But it is also so critically important to our teams, and our teams want to understand what that new North Star is for our companies and for our brands, and that's coming through in their level of engagement, and the more they're engaged, the better the experience is for our consumers as well. A lot of the digital capabilities, that we've talked about that have grown over the past 18 months, I do think some of those will be sticky, and we're seeing that amplification of digital things like contactless payment, even pay by link, where we're doing virtual shopping appointments you asked about. Yes, we still have customers saying, yes, I'd love a virtual shopping appointment, or I'd like to make an appointment at a time that's not only convenient for me, but I think the store might be less crowded. So those kinds of things that we've implemented over the last 18 months, I think will continue, and we'll continue to offer them to our customers.
That's great. It's helpful to hear those examples from both of you. And Joanne, your point around safety, because that was actually one of the questions that came into the chat was, things that you're thinking about in terms of helping customers feel good about those in-person interactions again. And those are some great examples of the kinds of things many of the brands in the audience can be doing. Are there any others that come to mind, Kevin, in terms of safety for customers and, creating the assuredness that spending their play date time, having a cup of coffee is now safe to do?
Well, here's one thing I've studied. Look, vaccinations are the key. I mean, we have a solution to this pandemic. It's called get vaccinated. And so, and there'll be a period as more and more people get vaccinated that's happening in every country around the world. But here's what we've studied. I asked our analytics and insights team to do this, and we've looked at it in 84 markets around the world. As soon as 35 to 40% of the adult population gets vaccinated in a country, you see a dramatic decline in the number of COVID cases, and you see the government just begin to loosen the restrictions a little bit. And as soon as that happens, 35 to 40% vaccinations, COVID cases start to decline, and the government just starts to loosen restrictions a little bit, consumers are out. They're free. They're like, consumer mobility goes through the roof. It's like, okay, the great human reconnection has begun. And so that's many people are just craving that human interaction. So they're willing to go out. Now, the question is, what experiences are they willing to go do? Do they want to get on an airplane? Will they go to a restaurant? Will they come to a Starbucks? Will they go to a baseball game? Will they go to a concert? And I think that's where every consumer brand has to be thoughtful about how they're creating the right level of experience to welcome customers back into their physical stores after a year and a half in this pandemic. And every brand has to make a decision on what's the right way to do that safely for their customers.
Yeah, for sure. And as we come up on time, it's worth noting, to your point, Kevin and Joanne, there's a lot yet to be figured out. But I want to personally thank both of you for your leadership over this past year and a half. Many of us running different businesses of different sizes, look to the two of you to set the tone and set the standard on how we manage in times like this and how we lead in times like this. So it's very much appreciated. And of course, for the two of you to spend an hour with your unconscionably busy schedules is a great service to us. And so both on behalf of Amperity, but on behalf of everybody in the audience, I want to thank the two of you for sharing your inspiration and your experience and your perspective today. And of course, for all of you in the audience, thank you for taking the time. I'm so lucky to be able to learn from people like Kevin and Joanne and be on an incredible journey with them and their companies. And so appreciate you listening in and joining us in this transformation. And as you can tell, this excitement that all of us have around how we're using data and how we're serving our consumers. So thanks everybody for your time today.
Hey, Kabir, I also want to just say thank you to you and the entire team at Amperity. I mean, your team has been an integral part of the Starbucks journey as we've worked to put together our first party consumer data and Deep Brew and everything we're doing. And so, from Starbucks to Amperity, thank you for all that you guys are doing to help us.
I extend the same gratitude from Tapestry. Thanks, Kabir.
Thank you both. Appreciate it very much. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you.